I'm 58 years old now, and for 2 decades, I've carried a secret that could have destroyed my life. In an isolated cabin in the mountains of Montana, hidden from the world and from very dangerous people, lived a creature that should never have existed outside a laboratory. His name was Jonas, at least that's what I called him, and he was a Bigfoot, not a wild Bigfoot, born free in ancient forests. Jonas was something different, something that escaped from a place where terrible things happened. And when he showed up on my property in 2004, exhausted, scared, and being hunted, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. This is the story of how a simple lumberjack became the protector of a creature the government wanted back at any cost. If you're enjoying this story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me keep bringing content like this. And comment below if you believe there are things the government hides from us. Now, let's continue. March 2004. The winter had been brutal in the Rocky Mountains of Montana, where I'd lived since my early 20s. My name is Thomas Brennan, and back then I was just a guy trying to survive as an independent lumberjack. I had inherited the property from my father, about 80 acres of dense forest, with a log cabin and a tool shed big enough to store my cutting equipment. The property was so isolated that my nearest neighbor was almost 5 miles away. It was perfect for someone like me, who preferred the company of trees to the company of people. After the divorce in 2001, I had become a hermit by choice. The silence of the forest was my therapy. My ex-wife Linda always said I loved those trees more than I loved her. Maybe she was right. Maybe trees were easier to understand than people. I woke up every day at 5 in the morning, drank strong black coffee, and headed out to work before the sun fully rose. It was a simple life, predictable, lonely. I liked it that way, or at least I had convinced myself that I did. That March night, a snowstorm was coming. I could feel it in the air, that pressure that makes your bones ache. My father always said our bones were better meteorologists than any weatherman on television. I was stacking firewood on the porch, preparing for days of forced isolation, when I heard something that made me stop completely. A sound unlike anything I had ever heard in 20 years living in those mountains. It wasn't a bear. I knew the sound of bears, had lived with them my whole life. It wasn't an elk, wasn't a mountain lion, wasn't any of the animals that inhabited that region. It was something between a moan and a grunt, laden with pain and desperation. It echoed through the dark forest like a lament from something that shouldn't exist. I grabbed my shotgun and a flashlight. Living alone in the mountains means always being prepared for the unexpected. Hungry bears at the end of winter, territorial cougars, even lost people who occasionally showed up looking for help. The snow was already starting to fall when I entered the forest, following the sound that repeated at irregular intervals. I walked for maybe 500 meters, the flashlight cutting through the darkness between the centuries-old trees. The snowflakes were getting thicker, denser. I knew I should turn back, that the storm was coming in strong, but something pulled me forward, a curiosity I couldn't ignore. Or maybe it was something more. Maybe it was destiny, if you believe in that sort of thing. I found the source of the sound in a shallow ravine, partially hidden by snow-covered bushes. The flashlight trembled in my hand when I illuminated what was there. At first, I thought it was a bear. The shape was large, dark, huddled against a rock as if trying to protect itself from the cold. But when I moved the flashlight closer, I realized I was completely wrong. It was enormous, at least 8 feet tall, even crouching, covered in dark fur, but not like a normal animal. The arms were too long, the shoulders too broad, and the face, when he raised his head to look at me, was almost human. Deep brown eyes stared at me, eyes that weren't animal eyes that contained fear, intelligence, and something that looked very much like pleading. A Bigfoot, a creature I always thought was just legend, campfire stories to scare children and entertain tourists. And there one was, real, alive, looking at me as if I were his last hope. My first instinct was to back away. Every campfire story, every warning about dangerous creatures in the mountains came flooding back to my mind. My finger found the shotgun trigger instinctively, but then I saw something that made me hesitate. He was wearing something, a kind of metal collar around his neck, with lights that blinked faintly in the darkness. Cables hung from it, as if they had been forcibly torn away. The technology looked advanced, far beyond anything I had ever seen. This wasn't a wild creature. This was something that had escaped from somewhere. The creature looked at me with those deep brown eyes, full of fear. Not fear of me specifically, a deeper, older fear. The fear of someone who has been hunted, imprisoned, pursued their entire life. He raised one of his enormous hands, not in threat, but in supplication. A universal gesture, even between different species. A request for help, and then he did something that chilled my blood, and at the same time filled me with a compassion I didn't expect to feel. He spoke, not clear words. His vocal anatomy clearly wasn't made for human speech, but sounds I could understand, broken syllables that formed something recognizable. Help, please. My God, he was asking for help, in English, or something close to it. "They come!" He moaned again, his voice hoarse and strange, looking back as if expecting something terrible to emerge from the shadows at any moment. They always come. I looked around at the dark forest, at the snow falling harder and harder. Who were they? And where had this creature escaped from? What kind of place kept beings like this prisoner and equipped them with electronic collars? "Can you walk?" I asked, lowering the shotgun. The creature tried to stand, but his legs trembled with exhaustion. He was clearly at the limit of his strength, as if he had been running for days without stopping. "My cabin," I said, pointing in the direction I had come from. "It's close. I can help you there. There's food, water, warmth." He looked at me for a long moment, as if evaluating whether he could trust me. His eyes scanned my face, my posture, the shotgun I had lowered. Then slowly, he nodded. The journey back was arduous. The creature was heavy, probably around 700 pounds, and could barely stay on his feet. I served as support, my shoulder under his arm, practically dragging him through the snow that already covered the ground in an increasingly thick layer. The storm arrived in full force before we got there. The wind howled between the trees. The snow fell so dense we could barely see 10 feet ahead. But somehow, through pure determination or maybe a bit of luck, we managed to reach the cabin. I helped the creature enter through the basement, the only entrance large enough to accommodate him, and settled him in a corner where there were old blankets and tarps I used to cover equipment. "You're safe here," I said, though I wasn't sure if it was true. "I'll get food and water." I went up to the main cabin, my mind spinning. What had I just done? Brought an unknown creature into my home, a creature that had clearly escaped from some kind of government or military facility, a creature that was being hunted. But when I returned to the basement with fresh water and food, dried meat I had prepared for winter, and saw the gratitude in his eyes when he accepted what I offered, I knew I had made the right choice. "Thank you," he said, the word coming out truncated but understandable. "Thank you." "You're welcome," I replied, still trying to process the reality of the situation. "What's your name?" The creature seemed confused for a moment, as if the question was strange. "Subject 7, he said finally, touching the metal collar around his neck. "That's my name there. That's not a name. It's a number." He seemed to think about it, as if he had never considered the difference. In the place he came from, there probably was no difference. "Can I give you a name?" I asked. "A real name?" The creature looked at me with curiosity, an almost childlike expression of hope, then nodded. I thought for a moment. My father's name was Jonas. He was a good man, strong, who always helped those in need, no matter who they were or where they came from. He had taught me that the measure of a man was in how he treated the most vulnerable. It seemed fitting. "Jonas," I said. "What do you think?" The creature repeated the name several times, testing the sound in his strange mouth. "Jonas. Jonas. Good. I like Jonas." "Then Jonas, welcome to your new home." That night, while the storm raged outside, I stayed in the basement with Jonas. He ate more than I expected, the food disappearing quickly as he regained his strength. Between bites, he began to tell me his story. Project Prometheus, that's what they called the place he had come from. An underground facility somewhere in the mountains. He didn't know exactly where. He had spent his entire life there since he was small. He knew no other world beyond concrete walls and artificial lights. "They catch us when we're young," Jonas explained, his words still truncated but increasingly understandable. Or they make us be born there. I was born there. My mother was a prisoner too. Your mother? Is she still there? She died, Jonas said simply, but I saw the pain in his eyes. A long time ago. I was small. I'm sorry. She told me stories. Stories about outside, about forests, mountains, open sky. I didn't believe her. I thought they were just her dreams. And now you know they were real. Now I know. The facility, according to Jonas, had existed for decades. The scientists studied creatures like him, ran tests, tried to understand what made them different from humans. There were other prisoners, some captured in the wild when young, others born in captivity like Jonas. There were 8 of us, he said. 8 of us in my section. Now maybe 3. Maybe 2. What happened to the others? Some died from the tests. Others they took away and never came back. One tried to escape before me. He didn't make it. The casual cruelty of those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Intelligent creatures capable of speaking, of feeling, of remembering, treated like disposable objects. How did you manage to escape? There was a failure. The lights went out, the doors unlocked. Jonas paused as if reliving the moment. I ran more than ever in my life. Didn't stop running until I got here. How many days did you run? Don't know. Many. The sun rose and set many times, and they're looking for you. They always look. They always find. But this time, he looked around the basement, at the stone and wood walls, at the storm raging outside. This time, maybe not. The storm lasted 3 full days. 3 days in which the outside world disappeared under a blanket of snow and wind. 3 days in which Jonas and I remained isolated from the rest of the world, developing an improvised routine and a cautious trust. During the day, Jonas slept. He was naturally nocturnal, I discovered. His eyes adapted for darkness in a way that daylight bothered him. This worked perfectly for our situation. During the day, while he slept, I could maintain my normal routine without raising suspicion. At night, we talked. Jonas was surprisingly curious about the outside world, about how humans live, about everything he had missed by being born in captivity. Do you have family? He asked me on the second night. Not anymore. I was married once. It didn't work out. Why? I was better with trees than with people. Still am, probably. Trees don't talk back. Exactly why. Jonas made a sound that took me a moment to recognize. It was a laugh, a real laugh. You're strange, Thomas. Look who's talking. And so our friendship began. 2 lonely creatures, each in their own way, finding companionship in each other. When the storm finally passed, the world was transformed. Almost 3 feet of snow covered everything, creating a deep silence that seemed unreal. I went out to check for damage and clear paths, while Jonas remained hidden in the basement, but I knew we couldn't continue like this forever. Jonas needed more space. He needed fresh air, movement, something beyond a dark basement, and I needed to find a way to keep him hidden long-term. I began making plans. The basement was only a temporary solution. It was large enough for Jonas to move around, but it didn't have adequate ventilation, didn't have access to the outside, didn't have anything that resembled the freedom he had never known. My property included an old shed, about 100 meters from the main cabin, that my father had built decades ago to store hunting equipment. It was solid, well-constructed, and large enough to be adapted. I spent the following weeks working on the shed whenever I could. I reinforced the walls, insulated the roof, installed an improvised ventilation system. I created a secret entrance in the back, hidden by bushes and covered by a door that looked like part of the wall. Jonas watched my work with curiosity when I visited him at night. What are you building? A better home for you, with more space, and a way to go outside at night without being seen. Why? Why what? Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me? It was a fair question, one I had asked myself several times. Because you needed help, I answered, and because I could help. Jonas looked at me for a long moment, his brown eyes full of something that looked very much like confusion. In the laboratory, no one helped like this. Everyone was afraid, or didn't care. Well, I'm not from the laboratory and I care. Why? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe because you remind me that there are still things in the world worth protecting. Or maybe I'm just tired of being alone. Jonas nodded slowly, as if that answer made sense to him. I was tired of being alone too. In the laboratory, even with the others nearby, I always felt alone. Then we're two loners who found each other. Seems like it. In April, the shed was ready. On a moonless night, I helped Jonas make the transition from the basement to his new home. He moved through the shadows with surprising grace for his size, his natural instinct still present despite a lifetime in captivity. When he entered the shed and saw the space I had prepared, he stood still for a long moment. This is for me. It is. It's bigger than my cell in the laboratory. Much bigger, I hope. Much bigger. Jonas explored every corner of the space. He touched the walls, examined the improvised bed I had made with straw and blankets, looked through the small window I had installed high up, where no one could see inside. "Thomas," he said finally, turning to me, "thank you. You're welcome. No, you don't understand. No one ever did anything like this for me. No one ever treated me like I mattered. You matter, Jonas, as much as any person." He made that laughing sound again, but this time there was something more in it, something wet, emotional. Maybe you're the strange one, and the rest of the world is wrong. Maybe. In May 2004, about 2 months after Jonas appeared in my life, I received the first indication that we were being hunted. I'd gone to town to buy supplies. It was a trip I made regularly. Nothing out of the ordinary. But at the general store, I noticed 2 men I didn't recognize. That in itself wasn't strange. Tourists and hunters passed through the region all the time. What was strange was the way they were dressed. Tactical clothing, military boots, posture that screamed professional training, and the way they were asking questions. I caught fragments of the conversation while pretending to examine shelves of supplies. Dangerous animal, escape from restricted area, reward for information. Any unusual sightings. My blood ran cold. They were looking for Jonas, the store owner. A man named Pete, whom I had known for years, was answering the questions with the natural skepticism of someone who lives in a rural area. "We haven't seen anything strange around here," he said. "What exactly are you looking for?" "Classified information," one of the men answered, "but it's important. Anything out of the ordinary, large footprints, strange sounds at night, animals killed in an unusual way, we want to know." Pete made a sound of disdain. "Friend, this is the mountains. Everything is out of the ordinary. We have bears, cougars, elk, all kinds of critters. Large footprints, probably a bear, strange sounds, coyotes, dead animals. Nature doing what nature does." The men exchanged a look. "If you see anything," one of them said, leaving a card on the counter, "call this number. There's a substantial reward." I left the store trying to look casual, but inside I was panicking. I drove back home as fast as prudence allowed, constantly checking the rearview mirror to make sure I wasn't being followed. When I told Jonas what I had heard, he didn't seem surprised. "I told you they would come," he answered calmly. "They always come. You don't seem worried." "I am worried, but I'm also tired of being afraid. I spent my whole life afraid. Here, with you, was the first time I felt something different." "What did you feel?" "Safe. For the first time, I felt safe. I'm going to keep you safe, Jonas, no matter what happens." He looked at me with those deep brown eyes. "Why do you care so much?" "Because you're my friend. And friends take care of each other." "Friend." Jonas repeated the word as if he were tasting it. "I never had a friend before." "Well, now you do." That night we implemented new security rules. Jonas would only leave the shed at night, and only on moonless nights. No noise during the day that could attract attention. No going outside if there was any sign of people nearby. I started varying my trips to town, buying supplies in different places so as not to raise suspicion. If I always bought too much food at the same store, someone might notice. I started paying attention to any unfamiliar vehicle in the area, any person asking questions. My life, which was already solitary, became even more isolated. But strangely, I didn't feel lonely. I had Jonas, and that, I discovered, was enough. The summer of 2004 was tense. Helicopters flew over the area occasionally, their dark silhouettes against the blue sky, making my heart race every time. Men in tactical gear were seen conducting searches on neighboring properties. The official story was that they were looking for a problem bear that had attacked campsite, but I knew the truth. Jonas spent most of those months inside the shed, only going out on the darkest nights. The confinement was hard for him, especially after having briefly experienced the freedom of the forest during his escape. "I need to go out," he told me one night, the frustration evident in his voice. I need to feel the air, see the stars. I know, but it's too dangerous right now. It will always be dangerous. He was right. The truth was that it would probably always be dangerous, but that didn't mean we couldn't be careful. Let's make a deal, I said. On moonless nights, when I'm sure it's safe, you can go out, but only within the property boundaries. And at the first sign of danger, you come back inside. Jonas agreed, though I could see it wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to run free through the forest, explore the mountains, live the life he should have had since birth, but he understood the limitations. I'd rather stay hidden here than go back there, he said. Anything is better than there. While we waited for the search to die down, Jonas and I developed our own routine. Our nightly conversations became deeper, more personal. He told me about his life in the laboratory, about the other prisoners, about the scientists and guards who controlled every aspect of his existence. There was a scientist, Jonas remembered one night, Dr. Marcus. He was different from the others. Different how? He treated me like a person, talked to me, not just about me. Sometimes he brought extra food when he thought no one was looking. What happened to him? One day he didn't come back. Another scientist said he'd been transferred, but I saw the guards' faces. I think they did something to him. Why would they do that? Because he was kind, and there, kindness was considered weakness. The systematic cruelty of that place horrified me more and more. It wasn't just imprisonment. It was deliberate dehumanization. They treated Jonas and the others like objects, like resources to be exploited, not like living beings with a right to dignity. Do you know why they did all this? I asked. The tests, the studies, all of it? Jonas thought for a moment before answering. They wanted to understand what makes us different, stronger, more resistant. I heard conversations sometimes when they thought we weren't paying attention. They talked about using what they learned to make better humans, better soldiers, super soldiers. I don't know that word. But yes, I think that was it. The idea was disturbing on levels I couldn't even articulate. The government, or some secret part of it, using intelligent creatures as a source of research for military programs. How many lives had been destroyed in the name of this insane pursuit? Do you remember all the others? The ones who were there with you? Jonas closed his eyes, as if accessing painful memories. I remember, each one of them. My mother, who died when I was small. Marcus, who was like an older brother to me. Sarah, who sang at night to calm us. Pedro, who was the oldest and told us stories from the outside world, stories his mother had told him. Lena, who was the youngest, born in the laboratory like me. What happened to them? Marcus was taken to another section and never came back. Sarah got sick, and they didn't try to save her. Pedro died during a test that went wrong. Lena, he paused, the pain evident in his voice. Lena tried to escape before me. She didn't make it. I'm sorry, Jonas. Me too. Every day. Fall arrived, and with it a gradual decrease in visible searches. The helicopters stopped flying over so frequently. The tactical men disappeared from nearby towns. It seemed like they had given up, or at least redirected their efforts to other areas. Jonas began to take more risks on his nightly outings. I accompanied him sometimes, walking through the forest in silence, two completely different beings sharing the same experience of nature under the stars. One night we stopped in a clearing, where the full moon illuminated everything like false daylight. Beautiful, Jonas whispered, looking at the sky. It is. I agreed. In the laboratory, I dreamed of this. Dreamed of open skies and real trees and air that didn't smell of chemicals. I thought they were just dreams. And now I know that dreams can become real. Sometimes. We stood in silence for a long moment, absorbing the peace of that place. Thomas, Jonas said finally, thank you. You've thanked me many times already, and I'll keep thanking you, because you gave me this. He gestured at the sky, at the trees, at the world around us. You gave me all of this. I felt a lump in my throat. This creature, treated like an object his entire life, was thanking me for something that should have been his right from birth, the freedom to see the sky. The first year passed, marked by constant caution and a friendship that deepened every day. Jonas and I developed our own language, a mixture of words, gestures, and expressions that allowed us to communicate even in the most delicate situations. His speech ability improved significantly with practice. In the beginning, he could barely form complete sentences. After a few months, we could have elaborate conversations about any subject. Jonas was intelligent, more intelligent than I expected, more intelligent than many humans I knew. He absorbed information like a sponge, asking questions about everything, wanting to understand how the world worked. I brought him books. At first, books with lots of pictures since he couldn't read. But Jonas insisted on learning. We spent countless nights with him practicing letters, words, simple sentences. It was a slow process. His anatomy wasn't made for holding pencils or pens, but he persisted. "Why do you want to learn to read so badly?" I asked one night, after hours of practicing the alphabet. "Because knowledge is freedom," he answered. "In the laboratory, they had all the knowledge. We had nothing. That's why they controlled everything." It made sense. For Jonas, learning was a way to reclaim what had been denied him. It was an act of resistance, even if only symbolic. In 2005, I brought a small television to the shed. Jonas was fascinated. He spent hours watching, especially nature documentaries. Each program was a window to a world he would never know personally, and he absorbed everything with an intensity that moved me. "Look," he pointed excitedly, "when forests or mountains appeared. It looks like here. It's similar. There are places like this all over the world." I wanted to see all of them, maybe one day, but we both knew it was unlikely. Jonas was as trapped as he had been in the laboratory, just in a more comfortable and kinder prison. The difference was that now he had chosen to stay. The year 2006 brought our first major test. I was working in an area a few miles from home, cutting trees for a contract. It was heavy work, but it paid well, and I needed the money to keep Jonas fed and our situation stable. In the middle of the afternoon, my chainsaw failed. While trying to fix it, I slipped on a wet log and fell awkwardly. I heard a snap in my ankle and felt a sharp pain that made me scream. Sprained ankle, maybe fractured, miles from home, alone, with no way to call for help. It took me almost 3 hours to get back to the cabin, dragging myself through the forest, using branches for support. When I finally arrived, I was exhausted, in pain, and worried about Jonas. I hadn't been able to visit him the night before because of work, and now I wouldn't be able to move for days. Jonas must have heard my moans of pain when I tried to climb the cabin steps. That night, against all our security rules, he left the shed and came to the main house. I found him standing at the basement door when I managed to go down to get ice. "Thomas," he said, the fear evident in his voice. "What happened?" "I fell. Hurt my ankle. You need help." "I'll be fine. I just need to rest for a few days." But Jonas didn't leave. He stood there, watching me with concern. "I can help," he said finally. "You took care of me. Now I take care of you." Over the following nights, Jonas did exactly that. He brought water when I needed it, helped me move when necessary. His enormous hands were surprisingly gentle, careful in a way I didn't expect from someone his size. One night, while he was adjusting blankets around me, I asked, "Jonas, why are you doing this?" "You're risking being discovered." "Because you're my friend," he answered simply. "And friends take care of each other. You're the one who taught me that." Those weeks changed our relationship fundamentally. We were no longer just a man hiding a creature. We were partners, family in a way, two souls who had found each other in impossible circumstances and had decided to face the world together. When my ankle finally healed, I realized I could no longer imagine my life without Jonas. He had become part of who I was, as essential as the forest around me or the air I breathed. The years continued to pass. 2007, 2008, 2009. Each year brought its own challenges, its own joys, its own moments of fear and peace. Jonas continued learning and growing. His reading improved to the point where he could understand simple texts. He developed preferences in everything from food to television programs. He discovered that he loved classical music, especially piano pieces, which seemed to calm him in an almost magical way. We developed rituals that became sacred to us. Every Friday night we watched documentaries together. Jonas chose one, I chose the next. We discussed what we had seen, shared opinions, debated like two old friends. On Sundays, when possible, We took nighttime walk. Jonas showed me things in the forest I would never have noticed on my own. He had an instinctive knowledge of nature, a connection with the wild world that no book could teach. "Did you learn all this here?" I asked once, after he showed me a hidden water source I had never found in 20 years on the property. Some things my mother taught me when I was very small. Others I feel. It's like the forest speaks to me. It must be part of who you are. Your species. Maybe, or maybe everyone could hear if they stopped to listen. Jonas had a simple wisdom that frequently surprised me. He saw the world differently, without the layers of complication that humans added to everything. For him, things were what they were. Good was good, bad was bad. Friendship meant caring, love meant protecting. In 2010, we had another scare. A man appeared in the region asking questions. He said he was a researcher studying local wildlife, but his questions were too specific about isolated properties and people who lived alone. "They're still looking," I warned Jonas when I got home after a trip to town where I saw the man. "They haven't given up." Jonas nodded with a somber expression. "They never give up. We're too important to them." "Why? What do you think they want from you?" Jonas thought for a moment before answering. "Our blood. Our strength, our bodies, everything that makes us what we are. They want to take those things and use them for their own purposes. Create better soldiers, create better humans, or what they think would be better." The idea continued to disturb me, even after years of living with the reality. Using intelligent creatures as source material for experiments, treating them as resources instead of living beings. We redoubled our vigilance after this incident. Jonas became even more careful in his outings. I began to vary my routines even more radically, becoming completely unpredictable to any observer. We lived in constant alert, but also in constant companionship. It was a strange existence, suspended between fear and peace, between danger and safety. But it was our existence, and we learned to value it. In 2011, something changed in Jonas. He began having nightmares. I would wake up in the middle of the night hearing sounds coming from the shed. When I went to check, I found Jonas agitated, sometimes screaming in his sleep, clearly reliving past horrors. "I see the laboratory walls," he told me one morning, after a particularly difficult night. "I see the scientists' faces. I see the others, the ones who didn't survive. And I feel the fear, all the fear I felt for years, trauma. Years of abuse don't simply disappear because you escape physically. They stay inside you, waiting to emerge when you least expect it." I did what I could to help him. We talked about the dreams, about what they meant. I told him about my own demons, my father's alcoholism, the divorce that devastated me, the years of loneliness that almost consumed me. It wasn't the same thing Jonas had lived through. My pain was different from his, but he seemed to find comfort in knowing he wasn't alone in suffering, that we all carry scars in one way or another. Over time, the nightmares diminished. They didn't disappear completely, they never would, but they became less frequent, less intense. And then the dreams began to change. I dreamed of my mother, Jonas told me one morning, his voice lighter than I had heard in weeks. She was smiling. She said she was proud of me. She said I had found what she always wanted for me. What was that? Freedom. Not just physical freedom, freedom to be who I am. Do you think it was real? The dream? I don't know. But it felt good. It felt good to feel that she's still with me somehow. The good dreams became more common. Jonas dreamed of endless forests, of crystal rivers, of skies that stretched on forever. He dreamed of a life he never had, but that perhaps he could have one day. And I dreamed along with him in a way. I dreamed of a world where creatures like Jonas could exist freely, without fear, without persecution, a world that would probably never exist, but that was worth imagining. In 2012, I made a risky decision. Jonas needed more than I could offer alone. He needed companionship that wasn't just a solitary lumberjack. He needed to know that there were other humans in the world capable of accepting him. There was one person I trusted completely, my younger sister, Sarah. She was a nurse at a hospital in Bozeman, the most compassionate person I knew. When we were children, she was the one who brought home every injured animal she found, the one who cried when she saw injustice on the news, the one who always believed the best in people. If there was anyone in the world who could accept Jonas, it was her. I invited her to visit. something she did occasionally anyway. On the second night of her stay, after much hesitation and mentally rehearsing what I would say, I decided to tell the truth. "Sarah, I need to show you something, but you have to promise me you won't tell anyone, ever. No matter what happens, it's the most important thing I'll ever ask of you." She looked at me with concern, her green eyes, just like our mother's, full of questions. "Tom, you're scaring me. I know, and I'm sorry for that, but this is important. More important than anything I've ever done in my life. Are you okay? You're not sick or anything?" "No, it's not that. It's different. Very different." I led her to the shed. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. What I was about to do could change everything. If Sarah reacted badly, if she told someone, if she panicked and ran, all the care of the last 8 years would have been in vain. Jonas was waiting as I had arranged with him earlier. He was nervous too. I could see by the way his enormous hands opened and closed repeatedly. When Sarah saw Jonas, she froze, completely motionless, as if she had turned to stone. The silence stretched for seconds that felt like hours. Then, to my absolute surprise, she didn't scream, she didn't run, she didn't faint. She simply said with a perfectly calm voice, "Oh my God, it's real. They're real. Sarah, this is Jonas. Jonas, this is my sister." Jonas, who had been prepared for the visit but was still clearly apprehensive, made an awkward wave. "Hello, Sarah. Thomas talks about you a lot." My sister looked from me to Jonas and back to me, processing a reality that defied everything she knew about the world. "You have a Bigfoot living in your shed. For 8 years, yes, 8 years. And you never told me. I couldn't risk it. There are very dangerous people looking for him. Government people, I think. People who don't care about him as a person, only as an object of study." Sarah approached Jonas slowly, with no visible fear. She extended her hand, and after a moment of hesitation, Jonas extended his. They shook hands formally, Jonas's enormous hand completely engulfing Sarah's. "Nice to meet you, Jonas," she said with sincerity. "The pleasure is mine." Thomas said, "You're very kind." Sarah smiled, and I saw tears in her eyes. "He's real," she repeated, amazed. "And he talks, and he's gentle. Tom, you saved something incredible." I spent that entire night explaining everything to Sarah. The laboratory, the escape, the years of care. She listened in silence, asking occasional questions, absorbing information that reorganized her understanding of the world. In the end, she said, "You know this is completely insane, right? All of this, the whole situation, is the craziest thing I've ever heard. I know. And you know that now I'm going to have to help." "You are?" "Tom, I'm a nurse. My whole life has been dedicated to caring for those in need, and clearly Jonas needs care. Besides, he's your friend. That makes him my friend too." "Thank you, Sarah. You don't know how much this means." "Oh, I know. I saw your eyes when you look at him. I saw the way he looks at you too. This isn't just a secret you're keeping. It's a family you've built." She was right. Jonas had become my family. And now Sarah was part of it too. Sarah began visiting regularly after that day. She and Jonas developed their own friendship, separate from my relationship with him. Sometimes I found them talking about things that had nothing to do with me, sharing inside jokes I didn't understand. "She's special," Jonas told me one night after one of Sarah's visits. "She treated me like a person from the very first moment. She didn't even need time to get used to it. Sarah's like that. She always has been. You're lucky to have a sister like her. I'm lucky to have both of you." Having Sarah in on our secret was an immense relief. For the first time in almost a decade, I wasn't completely alone in this responsibility. There was someone to share the worries, the decisions, the weight of keeping Jonas safe. The following years, 2013, 2014, 2015, passed in a routine that had become comfortable. Jonas continued learning, growing, developing in ways that constantly surprised me. He learned to draw, using charcoal and large papers I brought him. His drawings were primitive at first, basic shapes and crooked lines. But over time, he developed his own style, a way of capturing the forest and nature around him that was surprisingly expressive. "This is how I see the world," he explained once, showing a drawing of trees under a starry sky. "Through my eyes. It's beautiful. It's the truth. Beauty is in truth." Jonas also developed a fascination with astronomy after watching some documentaries about space. He spent hours on clear nights looking at the sky, trying to identify constellations he had seen on television. "There are other worlds up there," he said one night, pointing at the stars. "Places we'll never see. But it's good to know they exist." Why is it good? Because it means the universe is bigger than our problem, bigger than the laboratory, bigger than the people who hunt us. In the end, we're all small, and sometimes being small is comforting. It was a simple but profound philosophy. Jonas had a way of seeing the world that cut through complications, getting straight to the heart of things. In 2015, we received a letter that reminded us the danger had never really disappeared. It was an ordinary morning. I was drinking coffee when I heard the sound of mail being delivered. I went to get it as I always did, expecting bills and advertisements. But among the normal letters, there was a different one. No return address, no stamp, clearly left directly in the mailbox during the night. I opened it with hands that began to tremble when I saw the contents. "We know where he is. We know who you are. You've been watched for years. Cooperate and no one gets hurt. We have eyes everywhere. Respond by putting a green light in your window tonight. If you don't respond, we'll consider that you've chosen the hard option." My blood ran cold. They knew. Somehow, after all these years, they knew, or at least suspected enough to risk a direct approach. I showed the letter to Jonas that night. He studied it for a long moment, his face unreadable. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "What do you want to do?" It was a fair question. After all, the decision affected both our lives. "I'm not handing you over," I said with conviction. "Never, even if it means danger for you, especially then." "Jonas, after 11 years, do you think I'm just going to abandon you because some scary bureaucrats sent a letter?" Jonas made that laughing sound I had learned to recognize. "You're stubborn, Thomas. And you're my friend. Friends don't abandon friends. So what do? We ignore it. If they really knew exactly where you are, they would have come to get you, not sent a letter. They're fishing, trying to scare me into making a mistake. What if you're wrong? Then we deal with it when it happens, together. I didn't put any green light in the window, and in the following weeks nothing happened. No invasion, no visit, no visible consequence. But the letter served as a reminder. The danger was always there, waiting. We could never afford to completely lower our guard. I received more letters over the following years, some threatening, others almost friendly, suggesting rewards for cooperation. I ignored all of them, burning them in the wood stove as if I could also burn the threat they represented. Jonas knew about the letters. I didn't hide anything from him, and he always reacted the same way, with a calm I admired and a silent support that meant more than any words. "We'll get through this together," he would say, like always, like always. In 2016, the world began to change in ways that affected our situation, in unexpected ways. Smartphones became ubiquitous. Drones became accessible to the public. Cameras appeared everywhere. Keeping a secret became exponentially more difficult. I invested in countermeasures, motion detectors around the property that alerted me when someone approached, camouflage nets over areas where Jonas could be seen from the air, an even stricter rule about any activity during the day. "The world is shrinking," I told Jonas one night after explaining the new security measures. "Harder and harder to hide." "I know, but we still have our forest. We still have our life here. Don't you miss the freedom from before?" Jonas thought for a moment. "True freedom I never had, but the freedom to be here, with you, with Sarah, that I have. And that's more than I ever dreamed of when I was in the laboratory. You deserve more. Maybe, but I learned to value what I have instead of suffering for what I don't have. It's a happier way to live." It was a wisdom I was still learning. Jonas, despite everything he had suffered, perhaps because of everything he had suffered, had developed an ability to find peace in small things that I envied. In 2017, we completed 13 years together, more than a decade of shared secrets, of mutual care, of unlikely friendship. Sarah organized a small celebration. She brought a cake, impossible to bake under my limited conditions, and gifts for both of us. For me, a new work jacket. For Jonas, a set of illustrated books about different ecosystems of the world, places you can visit through the pages, she explained, as Jonas leafed through the books with reverence. Oceans, deserts, tropical forests, the whole world for you to explore. Jonas spent hours that night looking at the photographs, asking questions about each place, absorbing information about a planet he would probably never see in person. One day, he said finally. One day, maybe. One day, I agreed. Neither of us really believed it, but it was good to have hope. It was good to pretend, even for a moment, that a different future was possible. The year 2018 brought significant changes. I turned 55, officially in the second half of life. Jonas, from what we could estimate, was in his mid-40s, middle age for his species. We were both feeling the weight of the years. My back complained more from heavy work. My knees protested on cold mornings. Jonas moved a little more slowly, slept a little more, showed the first signs of aging that I recognized in myself. "We're getting old," Jonas observed one night, after watching me grimace in pain as I sat down. "That's what happens when you live long enough. In the laboratory, most didn't live long enough to get old, but you did, and you'll live much longer. Thanks to you, thanks to both of us. We're in this together." Jonas smiled, that expression I had learned to recognize over the years. Together, I like that word. Me too. That year, I began thinking more seriously about the future. What would happen when I became too old to take care of Jonas? When I could no longer make trips to town to buy supplies? When my body finally gave in to years of hard work? I talked to Sarah about it during one of her visits. "I need to make plans," I said, "for when I'm no longer here. Tom, you're not going to die anytime soon." I'm not necessarily talking about dying. I'm talking about becoming incapacitated, about not being able to take care of him the way he needs anymore. Sarah thought for a moment. "I can take over. If something happens to you, you have your life in Bozeman, your job, your friends. Jonas is more important. He's family now, and family comes first." That conversation gave me some peace of mind, knowing that Jonas would have someone to take care of him if I couldn't anymore. But it also made me realize how precarious our situation was, dependent on so few people, so vulnerable to accidents and circumstances. In 2019, I met someone who would change our situation significantly. His name was Marcus Webb. He was a former investigative journalist who now worked as a freelance writer, specializing in investigating secret government programs. I had read some of his articles online, impressed by the way he managed to document things that supposedly didn't exist. I met with Marcus in a city 3 hours away, far from anything that could connect me to my property. I told him only the essentials, that I was being threatened by people connected to the government, that I had sensitive information about a secret program. Marcus listened with professional attention. He was older than I expected, grey hair, tired but alert eyes. "What you describe," he said after I finished, "the pattern of intimidation, the letters, the surveillance. This is consistent with something I've been investigating for years." "What?" "A program called Various Things over the decades. The current name, from what I've been able to discover, is Project Prometheus." My heart stopped for a second. He knew the name. "What do you know about it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Rumors, mostly, but consistent rumors from multiple sources. Something involving the capture and study of non-human specimens. Something that has existed since at least the 1960s. Something the government categorically denies, but that clearly has significant resources. Do you have proof?" "Nothing solid. Second-hand testimonies. Partial documents that may or may not be authentic. But the consistency is impressive. Many people, over many years, describing the same thing. We made a deal that day. Marcus would help me better understand the threat we faced. In return, I would eventually share what I knew when it was safe to do so. It was the beginning of an alliance that would prove invaluable in the years to come. The 2020s arrived with a pandemic that changed the world. The forced isolation that everyone experienced was something Jonas and I knew well. For us, little changed in daily practice, but the world around us became strangely safer. No one was asking questions. No one was visiting remote properties. No one was paying attention to anything but the virus that dominated all conversations. "Ironic," Jonas observed, watching news about lockdowns and deaths. "The whole world now lives like I lived my whole life. Hidden, afraid, unable to go out. Do you feel satisfaction in that?" "No, I feel sadness. I don't wish what I lived through on anyone. But I also feel," he paused, searching for the right word, understanding. Now they know what it's like. Maybe this will change things when it's all over. Maybe. Or maybe they'll go back to being exactly as they were. Humans have short memories for others' suffering. Jonas was right, I discovered. When the pandemic began to subside, the world quickly returned to its previous patterns. The lessons that seemed to have been learned were quickly forgotten. But for us, something had changed. The pandemic years had given Jonas a period of peace he had never experienced. Less surveillance, less risk, less constant fear. I want more of this, he told me when things started returning to normal. I want more peace. Me too. And we'll find a way to get it. In 2021, Marcus returned with news that seemed too good to be true. Project Prometheus is being restructured, he said during one of our secret conversations. My sources indicate that the main facility has been closed. The specimens have been, he hesitated, relocated. Relocated how? Some transferred to other facilities. Others, believe it or not, released in remote areas. Why would they do that? Political changes, new administrations, budget cuts, and maybe, just maybe, some people inside the system who finally decided the program had gone too far. Can Jonas stop being hunted? I can't promise that. But the pressure seems to be decreasing. Maybe you can finally breathe. I told Jonas the news with caution, not wanting to create false hopes. It might be true, he said after listening, or it might be a trap. You don't trust it? I learned not to trust. But I also learned to have hope. Both things can exist together. Then let's be cautious but hopeful. Jonas smiled. You've learned well, Thomas. I had a good teacher. The following years, 2022, 2023, 2024, were the most peaceful since Jonas had arrived in my life. No threatening letters, no signs of surveillance, no visits from strangers asking questions. For the first time in 2 decades, it seemed like we had truly been left in peace. Jonas began to take more risks. He went out during twilight, not just in complete darkness. He explored more distant areas of the property. He spent time outside the shed, even during the day, as long as he stayed away from any paths. One night, I found him sitting at the edge of a stream that ran through our land. The moon reflected on the water, creating patterns of light that danced across his fur-covered face. "What are you thinking about?" I asked, sitting down beside him. "I'm thinking about everything," he answered slowly. "About the 20 years since I escaped, about everything I've lived here, about you, Sarah, Marcus, about how my life could have been different. Regrets? No. Gratitude. If I hadn't escaped that night, if I hadn't found you, I would probably be dead by now, or worse, still imprisoned. You would have found another way, maybe, or maybe not. The universe works in strange ways. It puts people in the right places at the right times. You were in the right place that night, or you were." Jonas made that laughing sound I knew so well. Maybe both. We sat in silence for a long moment, listening to the water flow, feeling the night breeze, absorbing the peace of that moment. "Thomas," Jonas said finally, "thank you. For what this time? For everything, for 20 years of friendship, for giving me a life, for treating me like a person when the whole world treated me like a thing. You gave me as much as I gave you, Jonas. Before you, I was lost, alone, without purpose, just existing. You gave me a reason to live. Then we're even. We're even. In October 2024, we officially completed 20 years since the night Jonas appeared on my property. 20 years of shared secrets, of mutual care, of unlikely friendship that defied all odds. Sarah organized a celebration. Marcus came too, for the first time visiting our property now that it seemed safe. The 4 of us, 3 humans and a Bigfoot, sat together in the shed that had been Jonas's home for 2 decades. 20 years, Sarah said, raising a glass. 20 years of an impossible secret that all of us have kept. To 20 more, Marcus added. Jonas raised his own glass, adapted for his enormous hands. To family, he said, the family we choose. To family, we all repeated. It was a surreal scene if you stopped to think about it, but it was also perfectly normal. 4 people who cared about each other, celebrating a connection that went beyond any conventional definition. Now it's November 2024, and I'm telling this story not because the secret has been revealed to the world, but because the time has come to record it. Maybe one day, when Jonas and I are no longer here, someone will find these records. Maybe the world will finally be ready to know the truth, or maybe not. Maybe this story will remain only between us, a secret whispered through generations, never completely revealed, never completely forgotten. Jonas is well. More than well, actually. He has found a peace I didn't think possible when I first met him, that scared and exhausted creature fleeing from unimaginable horrors. Today he is calm, contemplative, almost serene. True freedom, he told me recently, is not about not having walls. It's about not having fear. And I finally don't have fear anymore. I'm 58 years old now. My knees protest every morning. My back reminds me of decades of hard work, but I'm still capable of taking care of my friend, my brother, the creature who changed my life. Sarah visits regularly, already planning for the future, preparing for the day when she'll have to take over Jonas's care. Marcus continues investigating, documenting, preparing for a day when the story can be told to the world. And me, I spend my nights in the shed with Jonas, watching documentaries, talking about life, sharing the comfortable silence that exists between people who know each other deeply. Sometimes, on the clearest nights, we go out to walk around the property. Jonas points to the stars, identifying constellations he learned from books. I listen to the sounds of the forest, the same forest that welcomed me when I was lost, that welcomed Jonas when he was fleeing. You know what impresses me most? Jonas said one of these nights, looking at the infinite sky above us. What? That of all the vastness of the universe, of all possible places and times, we too found each other. That night, in that storm, in that specific moment, the chances were impossible. And yet it happened. And yet it happened. He turned to look at me. This means something, Thomas. I don't know exactly what, but it means something. Maybe it means that the impossible sometimes happens, that connections can be formed in the most unlikely places, that loneliness doesn't have to be permanent. Maybe it means there's always hope. There's always hope, Jonas. You're the one who taught me that, and you're the one who gave me reason to believe. We fell silent after that. Two completely different beings who had somehow found each other and who had somehow made it work. 20 years. It seems impossible when I think about it. 20 years of secrecy, of fear, of care, of friendship. 20 years that defined my life in ways I never could have imagined when I was just a lonely lumberjack living in the mountains. Jonas changed me, made me better than I was, gave me purpose when I was lost, companionship when I was alone, perspective when I had forgotten what mattered, and I like to think I changed him too, that I gave him something the laboratory never could: dignity, respect, love, that I showed him not all humans are cruel, that kindness exists, that it's worth trusting sometimes. I don't know how much time we still have. I'll probably go before Jonas. His species seems to have greater longevity. When I'm gone, Sarah will take care of him, and Marcus will ensure his story is told when it's safe. That's my dream for him now. Not just safety anymore, but eventual recognition, that one day the world will know that creatures like Jonas exist, that they're intelligent, sensitive, deserving of respect, that Project Prometheus and places like it can never exist again. Maybe it's too big a dream. Maybe the world will never be ready. But after 20 years, I've learned not to dismiss possibilities. After all, one stormy night in 2004, the impossible showed up exhausted on my property, and I chose to help. That choice changed everything. That choice became my life, and if I could go back in time, I would do the same thing again, without hesitation, without question, without fear, because some stories are worth living, even if the world never knows them. Some secrets are worth keeping. Some friendships are worth any sacrifice. Jonas is sleeping now in the shed that became his home. The forest is quiet, the stars are shining, and I'm here, an old lumberjack with an impossible secret, grateful for every day of these 20 extraordinary years. Thomas, Jonas told me last night before I went back to the cabin, do you think it was worth it? All the risks you took, all the normal life you gave up? I looked at him, at those brown eyes I knew so well now, and answered with the simplest truth I knew. Every second, Jonas. Every second was worth it. He smiled, that smile I had learned to recognize over 2 decades. Good. because for me too. And that, in the end, is all that matters. Two lives that crossed paths at the right moment. Two lonelinesses that found each other and healed each other. Two beings who proved that connection knows no boundaries of species, of appearance, of origin. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've made it this far, it means something in it resonated with you. Maybe the idea that what's different doesn't have to be feared. Maybe the hope that connection can exist in the most unlikely places. Maybe simply the story of two lonely souls who found each other. Whatever you take from this story, I hope it's something good. I hope you look at the world with a little more compassion, a little more openness, a little more willingness to help those in need, even when help seems impossible or risky. And the next time you look at the forest, at the mountains, at the wild places that still exist in the world, maybe you'll wonder, what else is out there, waiting to be found? Or better yet, what else is out there, waiting to be understood, waiting for someone willing to look beyond appearances, beyond fear, beyond what the world says is possible. Jonas taught me that the answer to that question can change your life. That sometimes the greatest gift we can give another being is simply recognizing their humanity, even when that being isn't human in the conventional sense. I hope you find your own Jonas someday, or that you become someone's Jonas, that you experience the depth of connection that comes when you open yourself to the impossible and discover it was possible all along. If you like this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. And comment below what you thought. Do you believe there are secrets like this hidden in the world? Do you think creatures like Jonas really exist somewhere waiting to be found? I'd love to know your opinion. Until the next story. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply extend a hand to someone in need, even when everything around us says we shouldn't. Sometimes a gesture of kindness can change two lives forever. That's what happened to me, and I'm eternally grateful for it.